Hey guys, this video is about temperature. The first thing I want to point out is in the US we use Fahrenheit. However, in other countries they typically use Celsius, and in the lab we use Kelvins. So we're going to talk about those temperature conversions today. Now, temperature is a measure of the average kinetic energy of the particles in a sample of matter. All right. When two substances of different temperatures come in contact, heat travels from the hot substance to the cold substance. Now, a thermometer. Um, we know that substances expand with increasing temperature and substances contract with decreasing temperature. So when you're making a thermometer, the fluid in the thermometer expands and contracts more than the volume of the glass, producing changes in the column height of the liquid. Now, in the past, there used to be a mercury thermometer. Now they do not use that. They use an alcohol-based thermometer now, which is much safer. And they can be colored red, green, blue, have different colors. So let's look at the temperature scales here. We have Celsius, okay, which is named after Andreas Celsius, a Swedish astronomer. The Celsius scale sets the freezing point of water at 0 and the boiling point at 100. So he just came up with the start 0, the boiling 100, which is the distance between the two fixed points is divided into 100 even intervals, so 0 to 100. Nothing fancy about it. It's a simple scale that he decided to use. All right. Now there's also the Kelvin scale. It's a little different. The Kelvin scale is used in lab traditionally. Okay. It's named after Lord Kelvin, a Scottish physicist and mathematician. On the Kelvin scale, the freezing point of water is 273 kelvins, and the boiling point is 373. So again, it's another 100 even intervals, but his scale stays away from 0. So we won't get that undefined measurement in math. You can't have 0, in the numerator. Okay. And there's also a term called absolute zero, which we're going to look at in a second. Absolute zero is a very, very low temperature. But let's compare the Kelvin scale with the Celsius scale. Now, both of them have a low point, except that Celsius freezing is 0 and Kelvin's 273. Now, both Celsius and Kelvins have 100 even intervals, okay, which Celsius goes to boiling point, which is 100, and Kelvin's goes to 373, okay? So you can see it's basically the same thing, just different numbers. Now, absolute zero, okay, is on the Kelvin scale. All right, absolute zero is a temperature point where the motion of particles theoretically ceases. So the atoms do not move anymore. They actually stop moving, theoretically. Okay, so it's essentially the 0 point on the Kelvin scale, which is negative 273 degrees Celsius, essentially the lowest temperature. So I drew up this little table so we can kind of imagine what the temperature actually is. It's very, very cold. Okay, so here we have boiling point, freezing point, and the absolute zero. We have the Fahrenheit scale, which you guys are familiar with. We have the Celsius scale and Kelvin scale. So absolute zero is 0 kelvins, which also is negative 459 degrees Fahrenheit. This is extremely cold. Okay, then we have freezing point, which is 0 Celsius, 273 kelvins, and we know it in the US is 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and our boiling point is 212 degrees Fahrenheit, which also is 100 degrees Celsius or 373 kelvins. Okay. Now, how do we convert? Well, it's very simple. Okay. Now you got to remember your orders of operations. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, especially if you have to use Fahrenheit, but we're staying away from Fahrenheit because we don't really use that because everything we use is in Celsius. I have Celsius thermometers. It's so much easier. Okay, so here's the formula for converting from degrees Celsius to kelvins, the top one, and the bottom one is for converting from kelvins to Celsius. Okay, now we don't have to worry about significant figures for this. Okay, And another note is some books have the temperature as 273.15, but we're just going to stick to 273. Okay, that's the conversion. So let's look at a couple conversions so we can finish up. Now, what we do is we have 37 degrees Celsius we want to convert to Kelvin. So simply, we take the 37 degrees Celsius, plug it into the calculator, okay, and we add 273 to it. So we get 310. Just type it in. Oops. All right. We get 310 kelvins. Okay. Now the next one, we have 961 degrees Celsius, and we want to convert to kelvins. So we take that number, put it right here. Okay. So it's 961 plus 273 is 1,234 kelvins. It's pretty hot. All right, now if we have, let's say, kelvins, and we want it Celsius, we would put that in the second one here. So we'd say 25 minus 273, which is going to give us a negative number, negative 248 degrees Celsius. Okay, and remember, degrees Celsius is degree C, and Kelvin is just simply K. All right. Now, if we have 1,225 kelvins, all right, we plug that into the formula here. Okay, we subtract that from 273, and we get 952 degrees Celsius. And that's it. Temperature is supposed to be simple. Just make sure you know the scales and their lowest points, and you are familiar with absolute zero being 0 degrees kelvins or negative 273 degrees.